Hi, welcome to this video. This is a video in which we'll be painting rocks, and for that I've selected this free photo from Pixabay. It's of the 12 apostles on the Australian coast, and of course I will not be painting all the rocks in it, but I'll paint a few just to demonstrate how it is done. If we start painting all the rocks, then it will take a lot of time. So just to make sure we have a good composition and you know how to paint rocks, I'm going to demonstrate that in this video. So let's get started. The first thing what I'll do is I'll sketch out the rocks, and before I do that I will, if I can show you the whole photograph a bit closer, then the photo looks like this. And I will be painting the rock which you see second from the left, the large one, and then I'll be not painting the rock which is there next to it, and then I'll be painting the rocks in the background, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And I'll also bring this rock which you see towards the bottom of the photo. I'll bring it up and make it slightly smaller so that it adds some directional thing to it, and compositionally it looks better. So now let me crop the photo what I'm going to paint, at least some part of it, and the late other things I will adjust in my drawing. So here I've cropped it from the bottom left corner, and I will start to make a drawing out of it based on which I can start painting. So I have this 140 GSM watercolor paper, and I'll be making a drawing of, or rather drawing based on the photo you see on the screen. I'm drawing a rectangle in which I can draw that. So the rock, before that I will fix the horizon line somewhere here, and the big rock is going above that. It's not going above that horizon line in the photo, but then I will make it go up just for making it slightly more interesting. And the rock should end somewhere here, and I'm not looking at each and every small transition in the direction, but I'm making an overall sketch. Just want to if you see, if I draw a vertical line through the center of this, or through the tip of the rock, these are called limestone stacks. Actually limestone, these are made of limestone. So if I draw a line through them vertically, you can see that there is more volume on this side, right hand side, than on the left hand side. You have to make sure that you paint it and draw it that way, and that will make it look more natural rather than making it like a triangle which is symmetric on the axis. Then I will draw the rocks which are in the background. So the rocks are slightly above the horizon line. This one is like this. Then the one which is beyond that is something like this. Almost, they are almost at the same, of the same height from where we are looking at the scene. Then there is one rock face here, and there is one more which is slightly above that, not much. Okay, and this rock in the background will have its baseline here. It's very important to have these lines drawn at the right position, because if I draw these two at the same level, then it will mean that this rock is also at the same distance as this rock, which is not the case. So make sure you draw this properly. Then let me identify their dark sides or shadows on them. This one is almost in the dark, this whole thing, this also and this also, but this is slightly lighter than this one. This is much more darker, and then it looks kind of weird that there is one shape here and there are few shapes here. So there has to be something which bridges the gap or kind of leads your viewer's eye towards this. So we saw a rock which is there, you can still see it in the on the bottom edge of the photo. So what I'll do is I'll use this rock and move it somewhere here, so that there is a slight connection between them and then it doesn't look unnatural. Important thing about rocks is that you have to draw them with kind of geometric lines. If you draw them with organic lines, then they tend to look soft and they don't look like hard rocks. I mean, you can of course paint pebbles with soft organic curves, but these are not pebbles. So make sure you draw these with kind of straight lines. Now the surf is here till here, and there is a wave which goes out like this, and I'm not looking at the photo per se for drawing each wave, kind of getting their overall direction and using that. And there'll be some part of the beach scene here, but otherwise this will also be water. And now let me draw the dark side of or shaded side of this rock. You don't need to draw them perfectly, but as long as you can create the light and dark sides properly, it will create that impression of three-dimensionality. And this part is dark, and the tip has some kind of vegetation or moss or things like that growing on top of it. Even this rock has it, but I can show that in the painting. Here on the horizon you see a small mountain, or rather it looks small from this distance, but there is a mountain or hill seen in the background, and there is not much detail in the sky, so I will not draw anything there. So now let's get to actually painting this scene. So let's first understand what colors we want to use. Because it's a seascape and I see a lot of dark blue and bluish green, I've decided to use Prussian blue. You could use ultramarine blue, cobalt, or any other blue also. Just note that the value structure has to be correct. The actual color can be here and there somewhere off the mark a bit. That's fine. You don't need to paint it exactly like what you see in nature, but as long as you get the value structure correct, everything will look perfect. So I'm choosing Prussian blue. If you don't have it, you can choose any blue which you have. For the yellow, you can see the yellow on the or the highlights on the rocks are much more closer to yellow ochre. So I'll use yellow ochre, and then for making a darker or a brown, I'll use burnt sienna and of course white, and take out some white. And those are the four colors, nothing more than that. Now let's get started with painting the typically I would paint from, or theory goes that if you are painting opaque you should go from dark to light, but because it would be easier to paint the waves with one stroke, uh, I'm choosing to paint the sea first and then I'll paint this rock. You could do other way also, but it's just that I find it, I think I will find it easier to make the paint the sea first and then paint the rock. So with that said, let's mix the blue which you see here, the distant blue. I have to make it opaque. So you can see that this is very, very bright, but the color which you see in the photo is not so bright. So I'll add some brown to it to make it slightly dull, or reduce the chroma in more technical language. And maybe I can throw in a bit of yellow, not much, a tinge of that, and some more blue. And let's see how it looks. Yes, this looks good. Of course, I'll add few more strokes on top of it, which will make it less uniform. Yeah, this looks good. So I'll paint it. I'll paint it with a horizontal brush stroke, and here I'll go over the rock, or rather, since this color is thick, I will not paint over this, because what I've observed is if you paint if you have a color which contains white in already applied on the paper, and if you try to paint over that, then it becomes the white in the earlier color gets mixed with the next color and then makes it dull. So I don't want that to happen. Again, I don't want to keep this patch of sea just like a flat color, so I'll start adding some variations. You could do these later on also. As I come down, I will add more yellow to it, so that it becomes greenish color. Here also. Here I am trying to maintain the continuity, so it's easier to paint that way. And this should not look like two different patches, so I'm just dragging this green on top of this also, so there is a transition and it's not something like a break. Now I'll come to the foreground, and what I'll do is I'll add more. If you can see, the greens and blues here are much more lighter than the blue and green here. So I will add more white to both these colors which are there on my palette, and will go on adding few brush marks here and there just to create that impression of water being seen through the waves, through the surf. And I'm doing it kind of randomly. There is no specific logic, but just follow the direction of the waves and don't make it monotonous or very manicured. There is randomness in the thing, so keep that in mind. I can always come back and add the white. Just just try to avoid a patch like this, which is very similar. So I'll adjust that in a moment. Let me add some more blue, which will go here. And here and there. And I'm purposely keeping these white patches in the middle. Anyway, I'll paint over them with pure white, but they also create an impression by themselves. And as you can see, there are some waves here, white areas here also. This color which I am applying is not pure white, but then it is lighter, much lighter than the overall color of the sea there. So it does create that impression of waves being there. That's what is required. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll wash my brush, take pure white and paint the surf, or rather I'll use this, but I'll mix the white here so that it doesn't get too blue green. Need some water. And I'll paint this wave, big wave first, and then there is, I can always come back and adjust this later on, but this will at least create the first layer of color. This has to be much more white, but this does give me a starting point. I'll leave it at this and come back to the water later on. By that time this will be dry also, so that I can paint more easily on top of that. Now let's see what we can paint. I think we can paint the distant mountain because it has a similar kind of colors. You can see a thin line of light color of the rocks there. So I'll use the same color and paint the edge or the base of the mountain, which is actually the shoreline, which has rocks similar to this. And the actual mountain is a bluish color, dark blue. I'm using a fairly large brush. I'll make it slightly less intense by adding brown, and let's see how this looks. This can be slightly more bluish. And slightly lighter. Yeah, it should be fine. Because anyway, this is not the focal area. I just need an indication of a mountain or a hill being there. I'll keep it like this, and I can adjust the height of the mountain when I paint the sky, because I can overlap the sky and reduce the height of the mountain. I just want to zoom in and show you this looks right now. It looks messy, but we'll pull it together in the next stages. So going back, now let's paint the sky, since we already have a kind of uh, blue theme anyway. Let me fix the light. Is it flickering? Now let's paint the sky. For the sky, I'll start with white and add a bit of blue, and the sky is not very bright, so I'll add a tinge of brown to it so that the chroma reduces, the saturation reduces, and let's see how this looks nice. I think I need to add more white to make it opaque, and slightly more blue also will do, because then this becomes focal area and not the sky. So the white will make it opaque and the blue will make it dark. Let's see. Yes. And now I'll run the brush over the mountain slightly so that the height of the mountain reduces. Also the details which you see will reduce. Let me zoom in. I'm not painting a lot of variation in the color of the sky at the moment, but let's see if I need to. Here I might have to show this mountain, bit of that mountain, because it's at the same level, or I can make the rock slightly larger so that I don't have to paint that mountain there. Coming back to this corner, okay, so that completes painting the sky. Here an important thing is to have the horizon line perfectly horizontal, which it is not exactly, but I'll adjust that when I paint this thing again. Now let's come to the colors for the mountain, and the base color will be a dark or mid-tone rather. I won't paint the dark. Mid-tone color for the rocks. So for that I will start with brown, and some blue to make it slightly dark, but I don't want it to be a black, a blue, so the blue should not be overpowering the brown. and some yellow. I think this looks good. Let's test it on the rocks. Looks nice. I might want to add some white in it. Yeah, this is better. So I'll paint the whole rock with this color first, and we can add the dark accents later. Here, this flat brush makes a lot of sense. Don't try to paint this with a round brush because that will make it difficult for you. We need to get these kind of edges of the rocks. So for that, flat brush is perfectly suited. I'm not looking at the photograph much, just going by what I had drawn. So that is to say that you don't have to be a slave to the photograph or to the scene in front of you. You can take some liberty of changing a few things. Let me lay in this color for this rock also. And now these rocks. This is the mid-tone for these rock colors. I'll paint darks also and lights also. I don't think I'll paint this mountain back here, so I'll just make this the rock in the background slightly larger so that I don't have to show that mountain. Right now all of these mountains will have, or rock faces will have, the same value and same color, but I'll modify them as we go ahead. Now let me add the color for the beach also. So for the beach color, I'll start with brown and add some white to it. Let's see how this looks. This is too light. Some more brown. I think that's fine. If we go by the M3 method of painting, which I always say you should, this completes our second stage of painting, which is if we go by the M3 method of painting, which I always say you should, this completes our second stage of painting, which is the block-in stage of the painting, which means you cover each area with its the base color, and in the next stage we can go ahead and paint the details. So see you in the next video.